Hello, my name is Daniel Christie and I'm your host, joined by my co-host today, Bruce Bown. Bruce, how are you, mate?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, really good, really good. And
Fantastic.
welcome to the Coastal Football Agency podcast, Pros Around the World Euro 2020 edition. The aim of the podcast is to enlighten the Australian Football Society on the different paths that players can take to make it to the top level and showing through our fantastic programs that it is possible for anyone that really wants it. Please visit us at www.coastalfootballfit.com. We'll be right back after this.
Under a scorching June sun in the French coastal town of Marseille, two Algerian immigrants awaited the birth of their fifth child. Later that day, a star was born. Cristiano Ronaldo, Wayne Rooney, Veron, Suarez, Van Basten, Gianluigi Buffon, Xavi, Iniesta, Drogba, Hazard, Tevez, Schweinsteiger, Steven Gerrard, Alessandro Del Piero, Neymar Forlan, Özil, Nakata, Jean-Pierre Papin, Ballack, Van Persie, Beckham, Giggs, Scholes, but the strongest of them all, Zinedine Zidane. Zinedine Zidane. Superstar. Zinedine Zidane.
And that was a little tribute to the late Les Murray. May your football spirit rest with us perpetually. Please show your support by liking and subscribing to our channel. Hello and welcome again to your weekly dose of the podcast. For the show today, we have a very special guest born on the 28th of May 1991 in Manchester, England, starting his career at the FC United of Manchester before making his way to Ashton United. So a series of clubs there in the English lower divisions with Stockbridge as well before making a surprising jump to Australia, which I look forward to getting stuck into and seeing how that basically came about before moving on and making another jump to Malaysia with Johor in 2017, which culminated in a fantastic couple of years in which in March 2019, our fantastic guest received his first call-up to the Malaysian national football team, but a groin injury prevented him from unfortunately making his debut. So stories left, right and centre, and I haven't even really asked him a question yet, but we want to welcome our fantastic guest, Nicholas Swirad. Nick, how are you? Where are you, first and foremost?
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be here, man. I'm currently in Pahang in Malaysia under lockdown. Just looking out over the beach now. Not a lot to do really. We had a training camp last week and the camp finished, so now we're just waiting for the season to restart again. Hopefully with all this COVID nonsense going on, can get going as soon as possible.
And obviously this is a Euro 2020 edition podcast, so it would be nonsense for us not to talk about the Euros. So tell me how you're keeping up, Swizz.
Being honest with you, mate, I don't know what it's like. I can't remember what it's like in Australia, but the times are awful. Sometimes I catch the 9 o'clock game, the 9 p.m. game on my phone, but after that, I've not really seen that much. I think England kicked off at 3 a.m. for the game against Scotland. But it looks good. It looks pretty open, especially the France Germany group. It looks crazy, So yeah, it's been interesting. I just done a predictor thing. I haven't going to get to that yet, although.
Well, who did you predict to win the tournament, or any dark horses that you had?
Well, I had the England-France final, and and I chose France, to be honest with you, which would be decent.
That would be what we were all hoping and expecting for. Obviously, all our viewers can see that Bruce is sporting the fantastic Three Lions jersey there. We were hoping for an England-France final in 2018. Swizz is predicting a 2020 final. I'm predicting France to beat Portugal in the final. I think the Portuguese team is absolutely incredible. Bruce, I've actually haven't asked you a prediction, a final.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to back England all the way. I'm gonna do it this year.
Dark horses.
No, dark horses. What about Hungary? Hungary done pretty well.
Yeah. Just coming off a fantastic result. Yeah. Swizz, any dark horse?
Dark horses. I'm looking through my predictions here. They're all pretty big hitters. Belgium, Italy, France, Sweden. I don't know.
Sweden, not bad. Very pragmatic, aren't they?
Yeah. But I don't know. Even Wales. Do you think Wales can do it?
Yeah,
not all the way, but obviously, somewhere going a bit towards the final stages.
Yeah. So fantastic expert predictions there. From Nicholas Rad to start the podcast. So fantastic way. But look, we want to get into it, and we want to start off with our first part and our first segment of the show, okay, which is a little bit about your humble beginnings in the game.
That's it.
Welcome back. Swizz, first question. There's no better place to start, really. Tell me a little bit of us and the viewers about where your career started. Where did it really begin?
I wasn't never at an academy or a professional environment growing up, to be honest with you. The first time I received full-time training was when I went to college, Manchester College, at the age of 16. I started playing for the FC United of Manchester youth team, and I think it's similar to what Bruce did. Maybe you do a college program, and you do that coinciding with full-time training as well. So that was kind of my first entry into proper training, which is very late at the age of 16, to be honest with you. And from that, I got the opportunity to move towards the FC United first team and kind of start my non-league journey. That kind of gave me the foundation, I suppose, to build on what I can now. Yeah, I never thought like I said, I never dreamed of being here now, to be honest with you. It's been a hell of a journey, especially when you think of I suppose, again, Bruce knows the cold nights in back home in England, training 2-3 times a week, and yeah, it's you don't really see what's at the end of it all. You just go in there just to play and just to try and improve, really. But it's been a hell of a difficult journey, but I suppose it's been worth it looking back now.
Did you have any players that you were playing with throughout that times in those age groups that you grew up with that ended up playing at a really, really high level whilst you were still remained at that FC United of Manchester level?
There's a few that played lower league, not really at the top level. I know. So, I mean, you pass, like I said, in the Manchester kind of non-league scene, there's a lot of players that do drop out from clubs, whether it's United and City, or whether it's the other smaller clubs. But, I think my first experience was Phil Marsh, who played at FC United. He played a game for Manchester United first team. Jamie Vardy was at Stocks. I played against Jamie Vardy when he was starting his career.
Oh wow, I didn't even know.
Yeah, and I actually went because I went to Stocksbridge. He was there, I think, a year or two before me when I actually went there. So yeah, there's non-leagues. There's definitely players who can make it, but most of the time it's usually just the lower leagues, not to the top like Jamie did.
So what was your main inspiration, or who was your main inspiration going through that early time period?
Being honest with you, I always just wanted to. It'd been my dream since I was young. It's always been my dream just to be a professional footballer. My aim was to just play one professional game, to be honest with you. So I could say as a professional footballer. I don't know. Looking back now, I suppose I was, like I said, I played with both of you. I've never been the most gifted footballer. I've never been the most, you know, I'm not going to outskill someone. I'm not going to catch the eye in that respect. I've always kind of believed in what I do, which is maybe the more subtle aspects of the game in terms of defending and those kind of things. So for me, it was kind of, I wanted to see how far it could take me, because many players I feel come from, football league environment or, professional academy, and they kind of drop down and maybe they lose a bit of motivation. So for me, it was kind of, I was coming the other way, coming from basically Sunday league football to college and then trying to see where it could take me. And it was that kind of, being honest, I never thought I'd be a professional footballer deep inside.
It's that underdog mentality, Swizz, that seems to be a constant theme throughout a little bit of your career. Do you agree?
Sorry, what was that?
The underdog mentality, a little bit against the odds.
Yeah, no, being honest with you, though, it's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a two-edged sword because on the one hand, it gives me the drive. Like, I was going to, there's a place called the Pits it's a five-a-side field in Manchester. I was going there doing my own sessions 3 times a week. I was making sacrifices where, instead of going out, I was doing extra sessions on a Sunday morning kind of thing, making lots and lots of decisions that allowed me to kind of progress, particularly technically, which is what I needed to work on. But it also works conversely, because even now, I'm sure we'll get to it later, when I come to a team, sometimes I do kind of question myself. There's still a lot of self-doubt, and it's something that I'm still working on to this day, to be honest with
you. That's fantastic. Wow. And that drive and that consistent performance is a theme throughout an episode that we had with Connor, which will be released shortly on our channel. Just that consistent drive and performance to achieve your ultimate level is what separates, obviously, the average from the best. So it's an absolute credit to you. Now, we definitely want to move on to kind of how your career transitioned from country to country. But the main aim of our podcast, and something that we want to definitely show to our younger viewers, Swizz, is how they can use their passport to their advantage when playing or trying to make it to different levels. So for you, that's a massive thing that Bruce and I definitely know. So I want you to be able to enlighten all of us here today a little bit about what kind of passport eligibilities did you have for you to be able to have the right to be able to play in different countries.
So basically, my dad's from Manchester, my mum is from Malaysia, and that opened up a massive opportunity for me to play here as a local player. It was difficult. It was difficult to organise. It took a lot of sending emails, exploration, and probably took over 2 years to organise in the end. But I did eventually be able to be classified as a local here. And like I said, it wasn't something that was just handed to me, to be honest. It was something where I think I don't know if I spoke about Junior Eldstyle before. He's a mixed player over here. I think I spoke to Bruce about him before. He's played national team and all this stuff. And I read an article about him, and I found out who his agent was. Then I contacted the agent. Then I contacted the state. So it was all kind of, if you've got the passport, if you've got the heritage, then use it. Use it. But it's not as, you've got to have the drive again.
Hard work.
Yeah. It's not really my kind of thing, to be honest with you. I like to do the talking on the field, but in this kind of circumstance, I suppose it's like going for a job, isn't it? You have to work and make the contacts, and then you've got to find, especially in Southeast Asia, if you find someone who's got a bit of power, a bit of pull, then it can work in your favour.
Absolutely. So for any young players out there in Australia, especially listening, if you have any sort of dual citizenship or nationality that you can use to your advantage, go through the steps, get in touch with the governments, get in touch with anyone that you need to be able to get that over the line, because that's going to help you. It's going to double your chances. For example, I can play in Portugal as a local player because my mum is born in Madeira. So I can go through to be able to get my EU passport and to be able to count it as a local player and go through the steps there. So anyone in that position, Bruce, obviously you're the same. Would you be able to explain to the viewers for the first time as well a little bit about your heritage?
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very similar to Swizz, I'd say. Mom's from Thailand, dad's from England. So, yeah, whether I was playing in England or Thailand when I was younger, it was so easy just to use my passport to my advantage. You count as a local player. That takes one stress out the way there. So, no, it's definitely recommended. If you do have dual heritage, tap into it, find out what you can do and dive straight in.
One thing I would say is that being on this journey as well, obviously you've got the top tier of professional footballer like in Europe, but there's such a massive space there for people all around the world to play professionally. Whether we meet
it's
people
a world
in this,
game. It's absolutely
exactly, yeah. But we meet people on this journey. And you're like, where have they played before? They played in the most random, obscure countries you've ever seen. In Africa, in South America, everywhere. There's definitely there's options there, there's opportunities there. So if you can make the most of it.
Beautiful. And that's the conclusion of part 1, Humble Beginnings. Thank you very much, guys. We'll be back very shortly.
You look like a guy who could treat me right. Boy, take a chance, will you let me ride? I could be the best thing in your life.
And we're back. Welcome to the Coastal Football Agency podcast, Pros Around the World Euro 2020 edition, joined with our special guest, Nicholas Swirad. If you want any information on the Coastal Football Agency podcast or any of our services and products, please head to www.coastalfootballfit.com. So, Swizz, now we want to start getting into transitioning from country to country and how your story basically unfolded. So we start off with England, going up through the lower leagues. How on earth do you end up in Tasmania, Australia? And tell us how that went down.
Actually, I first went to the USA. So I was in Manchester I was playing for Stocksbridge in Sheffield, and I suppose, like a lot of players back there, I'd done the non-league Manchester kind of circuit for, doing the same stuff, getting a bit bored of it. And I went to coach in New Jersey, New York for 9 months. So again, that's another opportunity that football's taken me to. But then I missed playing, so I came back to the UK, and through a company called Soccer Smart, I looked at the option of moving to Australia for a few months to play, and I had the opportunity to play there. I think there was a team in Sydney, Melbourne, and Tasmania, and and in hindsight, it probably No, I'm not. No, it's everything happens for a reason. But I thought like Tasmania would be. I didn't really do my research. I thought it would be a nice, hot kind of, country, a nice adventure kind of thing. And
I think this is a good place just to let the viewers and the listeners know that this is where us three are tied into the story together. So I'm obviously from Tasmania. Bruce had family in Tasmania and was playing in Tasmania at that time for the same team. Swizz comes down and we've all played together in the same team over a 12 to 18 month period of time. But anyway, Swizz, on with your story.
Oh, well, obviously I came over, and it was definitely an experience, a good adventure for me. I met yourselves, obviously. I made some good friends. But for me, it was kind of, after spending 9 months out of the game, it was kind of, all right, I need to make a proper go of playing kind of thing and just see what happens. And being honest with you, Northern Rangers were great in terms of, I remember going down doing extras with Bruce at the field sometimes, and trying to get back into the swing of playing. Had a few injury problems, etc., but it was a great kind of stepping stone for me. And like I said, before it was an experience. It coming from New York to Tasmania is quite a big difference, you know. So, well, it's kind of like I'm trying to take the learning from it in terms of like the mindset coming into it. I just embraced it, and like I said, it was. I suppose whenever I'll be living in Tasmania in my future. So, you know, it was a good experience for me, a massive growing experience for me.
I'm glad you mentioned extra sessions, Swizz, because for me, as a player at the time, you were a huge inspiration and role model for doing those extra sessions. Because at the time, you know, that's just a classic part of football, doing the extras to be able to get to where you need to be. But for local players, probably in Tasmania at the time, they probably weren't even thinking about that in that way and how that could help them. But for me, as a player who wanted to reach that next level, I saw that the foreign players who came in to Tasmania as would help me with my development, and I could learn something different from each of these players. So having the opportunity to do those morning sessions and spending half an hour, me, you, a couple of other players, Kenta, Joel. So yeah, look, I will never forget those times and those sessions, and that definitely helped me as a footballer.
No, for sure. I feel obviously you're a fantastic player. You know you are. I'm sure. Are you still playing now? I can't. I've not kept up.
Recovering from an injury at the moment, but yeah, looking to return soon.
Nice, mate. But that's what I mean. There's a lot of potential there. There's some fantastic quality players there in Australia who maybe don't get the opportunity to fulfill their potential. One thing that surprised me was, I suppose not surprising, although it wasn't as professional as I might have expected in terms of particularly the mentality. So it's kind of, when you get there, it's quite easy to fall into that trap maybe of lowering you know, the way you approach the game, the way you go about your work. So for me, you know, I had good people around you, and you know, both of yourselves, Kenta and Joel, you know, who were still trying to play at the highest level we could. You know, even Joel went to Thailand, didn't he, and played professionally afterwards.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, it's about trying to maintain, you know, keep focused on your goal and maintaining those levels, because, you know, like you said, it's quite easy to go into going out every weekend, which is great every so, you know, and you got to enjoy your life as well. But you know, it could have, I could have gone down a different path as well, and I doubt I'd be here without kind of doing the extras and making those choices.
That's what really struck me about you, Swizz. You obviously lived together back in Launceston, but you never went out, mate. You were always rehabbing, you were always working at home, you were always training, you were always doing something to better yourself to get to, obviously, that next level. I suppose you had that vision in sight, didn't you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, particularly at that time, I had the injury problems when I was, you know, when I was staying with you, and that was kind of you know, so many times players get injuries at the semi-professional level, and you kind of go down a slippery slope. You put on weight, and then it goes. It's difficult to get out of that. So I was really, really trying my best not to do that. And at the time, I had the contact in Malaysia, so I had kind of had that light at the end of the tunnel for me to say, all right, if I get this right, then there's something there at the end. Because yeah, like you said, being honest, I think Tasmania took me a bit by surprise in terms of the lifestyle. You know, since then I moved on to places which makes Tasmania look like, you know, that makes Tasmania look like New York. To be honest with you, going to Thailand and these, but you know,
explain that a little bit more.
Oh, well, obviously I was in Thailand, wasn't I, for 2 months at the beginning of this year in a place called Nong Bua, and I mean,
not a lot happening.
Not a lot happening, mate. I mean, it takes. There's no McDonald's. There's one coffee shop in the whole town. Hardly anyone speaks English, and literally there was nothing. There was just absolutely nothing to do. I didn't have a car. There's no taxis. There's no taxis in the place. It takes 2 minutes to drive around the town. You can't get more off the map than Namboa, to be honest with you. So again, though, maybe, you know, with perspective, I tried to go in with it, embracing the adventure, embracing the culture, but there was no going out there either, until you got to Bangkok later in the season.
So, Sweezy, you touched on it before, and this was my next question in regards to what was your plan when you went from England to Tassie? What was in your plan? You touched on it in regards to having that Malaysian contact in the background, in the back of your head. So tell me how that process worked there.
Well, first of all, I didn't want to go back to playing in England, to be honest with you. Like I said, it was a brilliant foundation, but after doing it for a few years, the non-league circuit I didn't enjoy it, to be honest with you. And after being to America, I wanted another adventure. So whilst I was trying to make contacts in Malaysia, being honest with you, I had the contact, but I didn't have anything concrete. So I was still kind of going out on a limb. But my mentality was, fuck it. I want to just go and see where football takes me. It's taken me to an amazing experience in New Jersey, New York, and now it was like, okay, let's try the other side of the world and go to Tassie kind of thing through football, and see what happens. But definitely, it's like, football can bring you so many different experiences in life, and that's why I probably love it so much. And I suppose coming to Tassie was just having that open mindset and trying to make the most of it was the main driving force.
Now, I asked our previous guest this, Connor. I said to him, and from my perspective as well, a lot of young players feel that they have to get to like a certain level that they're playing at in their own league to feel like they deserve an opportunity at the above league, okay, or at the next level. Now, a jump from the Tasmanian NPL to Malaysia is a humongous jump. So how did you get yourself ready to make that jump, and how did that correlate?
It was, honestly, the first year in Malaysia was, if I'm being brutally honest, was probably the most unhappy year of my life in terms of the difficulties faced and how hard it was. And I prepared as much as possible. I did all the prep work I could. Like I said, I was doing the work, not really going out, just trying to work and get as fit as possible. But in terms of going there, and to be honest with you, for me, there isn't. You can do all the preparation you want to be as fit as possible, as sharp as possible, but in terms of it takes a lot of time to get acclimatized. It took me 3 months to play my first game. Obviously coming into a solid squad with, I think there's 3 internationals in there, 2 from Singapore, 1 from Malaysia, and and a lot of youth internationals there. And for me, like we spoke about with the underdog mentality, it was hard. So to be honest with you, I did all the prep I could, but I'd never experienced professional football before in my life. I'd never been in an environment before, and I'm coming into one of the most professional clubs in Malaysia, and basically it's just been chucked in at the deep end, and then it's just sink or swim. But again, though, the way I swam was by doing the extras, doing the going in the mornings, getting the touch right, working on specific aspects of my game that I know would allow me to float in what was a very difficult environment. There were six mixed players who came to Johor too, and after a month, 3 of them were released straight away, and there was me. Actually, sorry, yeah, 4 of them were released straight away, and there was me and another lad who were kept. And being honest with you, I didn't know why. I didn't have a clue why I was kept on. Being honest, I wouldn't mind taking the money at that time and going, because I wasn't enjoying it. But I was kept on with the coach, and I asked the coach, being honest, why am I here? Why have you kept me? And he said, you work hard, and it's good to have players like you around. And after in the second half of the season, I think I ended up playing 19, 20 games at right back, left back, centre back. And again, I played, I think there was, after playing in Tasmania the next year, 1 year later, I was playing in front of 30,000 people in a game and stuff like that. And, at left back, out of position. And it was, yeah, from, I suppose, the jump was humongous. But it's important I feel, to realise that there's a lot of shit times too. There's a lot of times where you're down, where you feel like giving up, and being honest, I came home sometimes and I was in tears. I was just so unhappy. You keep going and things get better eventually.
In those down moments, what was hurting you? What was the big thing? For some players, it's family, homesickness. For some players, it's inadequacy. What was it for you?
It was a mixture of things. The culture I went into there. I mean, I know you two guys are quite down to earth lads. I don't know how much you know about Johor. It's a fantastic club, but it's quite an affluent club, and they show it's not a low key down to earth club. It's quite a extroverted kind of, okay, we're
the
better
Roman
than you.
Abramovich of Malaysia.
Yeah, kind of thing. Yeah, it's very it's a different culture from what I'm used to, from what we're the kind of people we are back in Manchester too. So that was one thing, being outside of my comfort zone there, and there was also the thing of where culturally it's very different Malaysia, and I found it difficult to adapt at times, because it's not a Western mentality. It's obviously it's a Muslim country, and the culture is just very, very, very different, and I did find it very difficult to adapt. And there was inadequacy too, for sure. At the time, I didn't feel worthy. Even like I said, even now, I still get those feelings as well, which is something I work on. So, it's not a nice. Be honest with you, it's not a nice way to live. But then sometimes the special moments that you get playing in front of those crowds, they're priceless, kind of thing. And you look back on them and you think maybe it was worth it.
The double-edged sword, the lifestyle versus the reward. And again, I think that's what a lot of young players just really don't realise. It's not the cars, the houses, the women, the money. For a lot of players out there, it is sleeping on single mattresses on the floor, getting up early, doing the grind, doing the sessions, things that, yes, we love to hear. We love to hear it because it doesn't get shown enough. It's not mainstream. So this is why we're doing these interviews with players like yourself, Swizz, because you really get to open up and give us a little bit of an insight on what it's really like. So in just touching on Johor and that experience itself, that first week, was there any moments in training or any moments inside the club which was like in your first week right there, which was like, okay, yeah, this is a little bit crazy?
Yeah. On the field, there was another centre half called Bayaki, who he's like a Singapore legend. He's played, I think, over 100 times for them or something like that. But then he's talking to me about, I think he played against Brazil in a friendly game and all this stuff, and he's talking about the players he's played against, and there's other Singapore players who played against Argentina, against Dybala, and all. You're talking about the kind of the players that seemed untouchable. There was kind of a big gap between the players here when I was here and there. Now there was, with these players, they, kind of touched that ceiling. Obviously, they're not there, but they'd had experiences of that ceiling, and it was kind of like, my God, this guy's played against this player. He must be, he must be just different, different level. And there was also.
Were there any players that surprised you, Swizz? Sorry, Swizz. I was just going to say, were there any players that did surprise you that did have that played against superstars as such that weren't as good?
What surprised me, being honest, was, again, coming into that professional environment for the first time. These players are human beings. These players mess up. These players, in my head, these are international players, and you think every diagonal is going to be perfect. You think every pass is going to be perfect, but they make mistakes, and it was refreshing to see that. Some of the players there, being honest, I was surprised, because I walked in there and I thought, these guys are overweight. Some of them in Malaysia, quite a few of the players smoke as well. And
Do they?
yeah. And that was quite a culture shock for me. But then they get the ball at the feet, and technically they're very good. So yeah, it's nice to, I suppose, to see that even like some the best players here, they'll play, and one morning it just won't click. They'll be giving away every pass, because at the end of the day they're just human beings, and they're only there because they're willing to make those mistakes, and they're willing to put themselves out there, and they're not superhuman. They've gone through they've just had maybe the opportunities that other players haven't had.
Do you think that's what's stopping Malaysia as a country and different countries in that Southeast Asian region? Is the culture stopping them from really becoming powerhouses in football? Because I can't see why a country like Malaysia can't be on par and making World Cups like the Socceroos do.
I think there's definitely a cultural difference. I think fundamentally there's a cultural difference. Even going to Thailand, there's a massive, massive cultural difference between Thai football and Malaysian football. In terms of like the foundation, the structure, the approach, the mentality. And no, there's lots of positives about Malaysian football too. There's, like I said, I'm hugely grateful and I love Malaysian football. You see the crowds, the stadiums, and the passion. But I feel like fundamentally, there's it needs to be coming from the right place. In Malaysia, for instance, politics and football are quite heavily mixed. So maybe quite a few clubs, the goal isn't a long term, slow, progressive transition for the club. It's more about, okay, let's get this player in, let's pay him whatever, and let's try and get results this season rather than long term kind of focus. So potentially it could be brilliant here. It could be brilliant here. But I feel like there's still quite a few issues which are being progressed on. But it's like I said, it's look at Australia. It's a long process, and it starts from grassroots.
So, Swizz, that was fantastic, by the way. Great to learn a little bit about your Malaysian experience there. Tell us now how that transpired into basically a national team call-up and your experience with the national team.
So I was at Johor, and there was a change in manager, and just to go build up to that, so I went to a club called Malacca, who were fighting relegation. I'm not going to big myself up, but I played quite a big part in helping them stave off relegation, and stayed there for another year after that. Played some good football, and I got a move to a club in KL called PKNS. At PKNS, I scored on the opening day of the season, and I scored on the second game of the season too. So a bit frustratingly, I suppose, I was getting noticed for my goals rather than being the defender, which I'd done the previous few years quite well, in my opinion. And I got the call up. It was called, it was a March call up for the national team. I think they were playing two games, one against in a little tournament. The first one was against Singapore, and the second one was against Afghanistan. I think Afghanistan. Yeah, it might have been Afghanistan.
Unbelievable.
So yeah, being honest with you, again though, going back to this underdog mentality, there was a bit of the imposter syndrome there, because, like I said, when I still in my head, I was still the same guy in Tasmania, the same guy in in Manchester, and when I went there, I half wanted it, but I half didn't want it as well, because I was absolutely, honest with you, I was absolutely terrified. I was very, very, very scared of going into that environment with supposed, superstars. And I know it's only Malaysian football, but in this bubble, these are big players, kind of thing.
Of course.
And yeah, I went there, and I had a bit of a tightness in my groin, so I wasn't going to do this full session. So we were just doing some head tennis, and because of the fixture pile-up, and the last kick of the head tennis, the ball was just a bit further away. And instead of, because I was a bit tense, instead of leaving it and saying, fuck it, I went for it, I stretched, and my other groin kind of tweaked, and I was out for maybe 5 days or so after that. The camp was 2 weeks. So then I did my rehab, all this stuff. And it gets to the Friday, I'm still feeling it a little bit. And the assistant coach says, come on, now it's time to push. And I was like, why? It's not ready. And he's like, no, push, try it. Because there needs to be a cut-off date for the registration because it's an official FIFA match. You need to be registered from the bigger squad to the smaller squad. So I push, and then it goes again, a bit worse this time, and it kind of works out that my recovery is, I started training the day after the first game against Singapore. So if that coach hadn't pushed me, I would have actually been okay for the registration. Everything would have been fine, and I would have been able to play those 2 games. And
that's what I'm picking up. Sorry to interrupt, but that's what I was picking up. Do you feel that, again, is that a cultural thing, or is that just that person, just that one individual person that it felt like if they trusted you to play, any other player that I'm thinking would have been given the time there and some common sense would have came into play?
Being honest with you, I just think that the coach didn't know. He didn't know. This is a thing though, like I said, in Malaysia, there's a lot of people who seem to be in positions of power, in positions of, this guy's a good coach, don't get me wrong, but in terms of, how to put it, so for instance, like in Australia and the UK, you know your speciality, you know your field, you know what what your job is, kind of thing, and you leave the physiotherapy to the medical department, you leave to the the psychology to the psychology department. I think it's a bit more, I know my bit, and then I'll delegate to the people who know better. Whereas over here, it's kind of, sports science isn't a big thing at many clubs. These is still a bit more of the old school mentality. So this guy came in and said, like I said, good coach, good guy. Although he pushed me, and at the time, maybe I should have said no. But in my head, it was that kind of thing where, right, if I'm going to come on this camp, I need to exhaust every single option to make sure that, I need to exhaust every single option to know that I gave it everything, and I wouldn't have anything in the back of my head saying, if I pushed for that, then maybe I would have my caps. You know what I mean? I wanted to just make sure I'd given everything. But then the frustrating thing was that the cut-off date wasn't even until the next week, so I could have waited and I could have trained the next week and then been in the team for both those games. And there was also a friendly match against Nepal at the end of the camp that was cancelled. So there's quite a few different things that happened where if the guy doesn't tap me on the shoulder and say, "Come on, push yourself today," then I'd have my caps by now. And being honest here, that's probably the low point. I remember being in the showers crying afterwards because I was that close to climbing Everest, and it didn't happen.
Man, yeah, that's an unbelievable story. And I guess continuing on from that, that you not being able to get a cap, if I've got the story correct, then harmed you a couple of years later down the line with your transition to Thailand. So right at the peak, like you said, right at the top of Everest, how did you continue on?
I had a good season that year, even though I didn't get a call up again for the rest of the year. Apparently, I'm not sure why. Maybe they thought I was injury prone, I've heard. So, okay. Then I went to another...
Okay.
But then I went to another big club called Selangor, and that was COVID year last season. So, and unfortunately, again, I had a few problems with injuries there. It didn't work out. And there was politics as well at the club, which meant that, being honest, I didn't perform as I'd wanted to. But then the opportunity to move to Thailand came about, and I went to the team that were top of the Thai Division 2. I went there for 2 months, and we won the league there. And because I was an import player at this point, like I was in Tasmania, the Thai league's probably the Thai First Division. I'm sure Bruce will tell you is the best in Southeast Asia by quite a bit. And because they want to maintain the quality of the league, if you're a Southeast Asian import, you have to have 3 international caps. And obviously, because of the lack of, I've not played international football. Because of that, I couldn't continue with the team, unfortunately. So, yeah, it kind of came full circle, which was a bit, disappointing, frustrating, and all that stuff. But again, I got to take the positives from it. I got to take, still so many fantastic experiences. Would I rather have an international call up and experience the camp rather than not? Of course, it's just that the way it happened was a bit of a bitter pill to swallow. Still is.
Of course. And where do you see yourself now? What does the future hold?
I've actually just joined. I came back to Malaysia. I've joined they are a big team over here called Pahang. They're not doing as well as they should be doing. So I suppose it's like it's been for the past however many years. I keep working, trying to enjoy it, and seeing where the journey kind of eventually takes me. It's kind of, I used to be a bit more, I suppose, uptight, a bit more stressed about things, but I don't think, with this kind of football journey you can be. Like, I was meant to be playing in Thailand. I was meant to be training in Thailand now. Then the next week I end up here in in a small place in Malaysia, and then it just going with the flow kind of thing. But I feel like in terms of, as you go down this journey, the things do change. The way you approach things do change. I'm trying to maybe be a bit kinder to myself, be a bit more, a bit softer on myself to try and enjoy it a bit more. Whereas in the past, like I said, I was so driven, because I feel like, you get to a point where you realise you got to try and enjoy the journey as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's a really good way of looking at it. Yeah, you're at that stage of the career now where being able to cherish every moment, every heartbeat that you have out on the pitch, it should be the priority and should be the aim. And that's fantastic. Now, the last question that I wanted to go to before we break for part 3 is psychology, because that was, you mentioned that a couple of times, and that's something that really resonates with me, especially the study of the mind, the study of the brain. But without going into too much detail, did you have any help in regards to the psychological part of the game, or how did you manage that?
Yeah, so I work with a sports psychologist. I've how many years now? I think it's been for the past 5 years. I pay a sports psychologist in the UK. He's a good friend now, and I can call him up about anything. We look at games, analyze games, and basically talk through, the way I'm feeling, the way I'm looking at the situations. And honestly, we spoke about the underdog mentality, the syndrome before. He's been priceless, absolutely priceless. I can't say how important the psychological aspect is. And being honest, I'm paying him. It's not cheap, and obviously my salary's gone up from where I started. But even when I wasn't, he was taking a considerable part of my wage. It's kind of like that was the investment for myself that I needed to do to make sure that I get there. So yeah, it's kind of everything I've done, everything, especially with the psychological stuff. It's you invest in it, and I feel it does pay off, because, like you said, it's not just about the journey. All this stuff. It's not just about being the best footballer you can be. It's about trying to be the best person you can be at the end of it too. For me, so So yeah, like I overthink. I've got quite an active mind in that respect. So that whether it's the applied techniques, the breathing stuff, I meditate. That's something that's helped me massively. Whether it's the applied techniques or it's helping you have a better, a more clear perspective of life and your journey and where you're going. But it's the psychological aspect's huge, huge, huge.
What was his name, Swizz? Was it Brian?
Brian? Oh no. So I was lucky because I kind of had a mentor as well called Adam. He was my old college teacher. So he was the one who kind of first said, okay, here's a new way of looking at the path you're going on. And that was when I was at college, and he was absolutely huge. But now I still speak to him, and he's still a mentor for me. But now I actually have like my own kind of personal sports psychologist who I speak to.
Oh, I remember that. I remember I went out to Thailand a few years ago, and you passed me on to one of the sports psychologists. Was he? I think.
Oh yeah,
I can't remember his name. Martin. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, you spoke to him yourself? Yeah. Of course you did. Yeah.
Yeah, just for a bit, and he was brilliant. I only had a brief chat with him, only for maybe 2 or 3 days or whatever, but it was brilliant. So I can see why you certainly added that for yourself. So.
What was it for you? I mean, if you don't mind going into it, was it
beautiful, excellent?
Yeah. No, I remember I just reached out to you because I was at Police Terror. They were at the top of the top division anyway. You know what? I was down the Gold Coast. I wasn't even playing the NPL at this point. I just had a call from an agent out in Thailand. You said, "So can you get here tomorrow?" And you helped out massively. I can remember you even paid for my ticket over there, if you can remember that, Swizz. And then turned up at Police Terror, and I was just like, wow, these guys are just ballers. No, I still got to get you. But no, I was at Police Terror, and like some of the players, like, Thai internationals. I even played with a few guys that were at Serie A and like the Brazilian top league, and even one of the lads was I forgot his last name, but it's like Torre or something like that. He played for Reading Football Club. He's centre back for Police Terror, and I obviously got a picture with him. But it's like some of the players you're playing with in Australia, and then making that jump to I suppose one of the top leagues out in Southeast Asia is a huge jump, and it's just mind blowing with the players you'll be playing with and against. So that was pretty much it. I just thought I was out of depth, so I just needed a bit of talk at that point. And he was just saying, well, it's pretty hard to do anything instantly. So he's just, if I can remember correctly, it's all about self-talk, a lot of this, reassuring yourself when you're on the pitch, take a second just to breathe and just, see where you are, and obviously go from there. He was fantastic.
That's quality, man. Glad it helps.
So cheers for that.
Beautiful. Yeah, well, thank you very much for that, Swizz. A little bit of a introduction for part 2 in your steps to pro. We'll be back very shortly. Welcome back to part 3 and 4 of the Coastal Football Agency Pros Around the World podcast, here with our special guest, Nick Swirad, in Malaysia currently at the moment. I just want to ask you, Swizz, from your perspective, if you had a program like that when you were younger, possibly in England and stuff like that, how would it have benefited you going forwards?
Oh, it would have been massive. trying to get the foundations, the strength foundations, is something where I wanted the support when I was younger, but I struggled to find it. To be honest with you, because it was financially, it was difficult for me, and being honest with you, I'm paying the price now. So even like, we've had a week off this week, but I'm paying for a private kind of fitness coach, trainer, physio, whatever you want to call it, to again trying to invest in myself, because my foundation, which if I if I maybe had that support when I was younger, I wouldn't need to do what I'm doing now, because I've got muscle imbalances, I've got things that need to be sorted out here and there. So yeah, without sounding harsh on myself, if I'd had that support, maybe I wouldn't have been injured in the national camp. Maybe I would. You know what I mean? It's invest in yourself, I suppose, when you're younger, and I feel like it'll pay off in the future. You don't know how.
Beautiful, beautiful. Now we're going to move on to some rapid fire questions in part 4. Question number 1. We're out of 9. We've got 9 questions here on our rapid fire 9, Swizz. Just all round questions, just in regards to football, and trying to get some sneaky stories out of you as well. So, first question, like I said, best stadium / worst stadium that you've ever played in.
Oh, best stadium, I'd say there's the Bukit Jalil Stadium in KL. It's a new one. It's absolutely huge. It's massive. There's that one, and there's also my old team stadium, Shah Alam Stadium in KL, which I think it holds 80,000. So when that's full, I think there was a game last season played in front of 75,000 people or something like that. It's yeah, you can't beat it. Worst stadium, there's a new one in not the worst stadium, but for me personally, there's a new one in Johor. They've got a new unbelievable stadium, Sultan Ismail one. It's the worst stadium for me because I played there once, and it was I was playing with half an injury, and it's possibly one of the worst games I've had in my life. I was pulled after 60 minutes. I was pulled after 60 minutes, and it was Selangor against Johor, huge game. A lot of the people in the country were watching it, and yeah, for that respect, yeah, it's probably the worst stadium for me.
Beautiful. Next question here. Best goal or most important goal that you've ever scored?
Ooh. For defender, I've been pretty fortunate that I've scored a few goals. But I scored the last minute winner against Selangor. It was 2-2. And I think I scored in the 94th minute, literally the last last touch of the ball of the game. And my mum and dad were there. And again, it's a nice stadium. The stadium went off, and it was a really nice moment. But also scored in the last goal in Thailand. We won the league in March.
To win the league, didn't you?
Yeah. So that was a game when we actually confirmed as champions. I scored the last goal there. And that was a priceless moment, which I didn't expect.
Excellent. Bruce, any rapid fires from you?
Yeah, I'll go for a couple here, Swizz. So, biggest injury / setback?
It's got to be the national team one. But as well as that, I've also, I think I had the knee problems when I was in Tasmania. That's been quite a recurring theme. And I still have those issues today, to be honest with you. So again, it's something that makes things a lot more difficult day to day. But it's kind of, you just got to keep working and pray, believing that it'll get better eventually.
Yeah. No, spot on. Well, I've got a couple good ones here, Swizz, so we'll go with this one. So, laziest trainer or biggest diva?
Biggest diva? Oh. Laziest. I mean, being honest here, there's quite a few options for the laziest one. I'd say where I am now at Pahang, there's a guy called Mark Goulon. He used to play for Blackburn Rovers. He's an amazing person, amazing player, but he
Okay.
does what the hell he wants, to be honest with you. But because he's that good on the field, you know what I mean. It doesn't really make a difference. But yeah, if you actually look him up, he scored a goal from the halfway line, I think 2 years ago, and it went viral or something. But yeah, amazing player.
Okay.
We'll get it up for the viewers in post.
Nice, mate.
And last one from me. Best player you've ever played against and with?
Oh, best player I played against was, I think, Luciano Figueroa. There's two actually. Luciano Figueroa, he played for Argentina, and I played
Wigan
against
as well.
I think, yeah, he played in the UK.
That's a different.
Is it the right Figueroa?
I think that was.
Different Figueroa. I think he played for Birmingham in the UK, or something like that. But
Yeah. I thought so.
He played. Yeah, he's played. He played. For Argentina quite a few times, and his movement, his touch. He was mid-30s when I played against him, but still just physically brilliant, intelligent, everything amazing. And there's also a player called Diogo who I played against in that game, the worst game I played.
Was he in Thailand? Was he the one at Buriram?
Yeah,
Brazilian striker, Diogo.
Yeah, that was
curly
him.
hair.
Yeah, really nice guy.
Yeah, okay. He's a
I played against
baller.
him a few times, but
Okay.
I've done all right. Just that one game, again, my knees, I couldn't really keep up with him. But yeah, he's a big player too. I think he played for Santos, won the Copa Libertadores with them.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. So they're the best two players I played against, I think.
Beautiful.
With is a tough one. I think there's a lad called Tiago. His second name escapes me. When I was at Malacca, but he played Serie A.
The one at Liverpool.
Yeah, not that one. But yeah, he played the one I played that he played La Liga with Hercules, and yeah, he was fantastic. He's telling me stories, playing against Ramos and Messi and all this stuff, and you're like, what the hell are you doing here playing alongside there? You know what I mean? But yeah, brilliant player.
Beautiful. Last three questions here. We got best nights out / best cities ever travelled to.
Interesting.
Ooh, Bangkok. Best. Done. Bangkok was absolutely. Oh yeah. I mean, especially after we won the league, that was when I scored the goal. I think for a solid 2-3 weeks, it was fantastic. Like I said, you work hard, you got to enjoy
Any
it.
podcast appropriate stories?
Probably not, to be honest. No, probably not. Just say it's a 24/7 city.
Oh, that's great. All right.
Yeah.
Least favourite manager / coach to work under?
Being honest, I probably don't get along with don't get along, but I find the ones that are hardest to work under are the old school coaches, the runners, predominantly probably because my body struggles. We spoke about the physical aspect there, when it's on a hard surface in Southeast Asia and you're running every day, it's really difficult. And even though we won the league, the coach I had in Thailand didn't speak a word of English, so I don't really get to know him that well as a person, but he was all right. But I struggled with him because we'd travel to 8 hours to some random place, and then we'd come back and he'd arrange a friendly game for 100 minutes the day after the game. We do running, and yeah, I think probably not because of him, but probably because of the type of coach he was, didn't really mix with me, and he didn't speak a word of English either. So because of that, it's probably the coach I had in Thailand was the most difficult one.
And just quickly, this is not a rapid fire one, but tell us a little bit about the difference of coaches between the three countries that you played in.
Obviously, starting in Australia, my experience there isn't that broad. So obviously we all worked under Dane, lovely guy. But I'm not sure how specialised he was in terms of being, football coach. He's probably more of a manager than anything, trying to, motivate the players rather than being a,
Definitely.
tactician kind of thing. In Malaysia, the coaches are generally quite old school. The local coaches of a higher. I've only worked with the older local coaches. Maybe it's different for the younger ones, but it's quite like I said, old school run. If you're fitter, you'll outdo the other team. Tactically, I wouldn't say they're that adept. But the foreign coaches I've worked with over here have been fantastic. To be honest with you, there's a Portuguese coach called Almeida who I worked with at Malacca, who was fantastic, man manager and tactically. And my first coach in Johor, who's actually the JDT1 manager now, Benjamin Mora, was absolutely fantastic. And I suppose maybe the general standard isn't that good, but then not that good, although it's here. But then when you get the really good coaches, you see the real difference in the terms of the quality in terms, because I feel like so many times coaches negate certain areas, like I said, the psychological area, the man management area. It's rare to at this level, I think, to get a coach who tries to incorporate the psychological, tactical, technical. He tries to incorporate the whole picture together. Most of the time, it's okay. Come to the training field, get a fitter, go back home, or you'll be physically the fittest team, although there'll be no sports science behind anything you're doing. And it's, being honest with you, it's rare that you find those gem coaches. And I feel like when you get hold of those coaches, you want to stay with them as long as possible as well.
Excellent. No, fantastic insight, and thanks so much for that. The last rapid fire question was longest away trip that you've ever had in football.
Oh, longest away trip. Some of the coach journeys are awful. I'm in Thailand as well. When especially with COVID, I think we had maybe an 11-hour or 12-hour coach journey to some place, because Nongbua is right up north. Nongbua is right up north. And when you're playing, I can't remember where we played. I remember we finished the game about, we left, I think, about midnight, and we got back about 9 or 10 a.m. the next day on a horrible coach. And then we had training in the afternoon, and it was crazy. But that's the kind of stuff that I suppose people don't see, don't realize you're traveling to these places on a Saturday, you're getting back Sunday morning, then you'll have a recovery session on the Sunday afternoon, then Monday you might be traveling again, and it takes its toll on you mentally and physically, especially in Southeast Asia, where sometimes the facilities in the hotel and they're not the most comfortable sometimes, so it can get quite a drag on the head and the body.
Beautiful. Thank you very much for that. And that is the end of our rapid fire questions. Thank you very much.
We've just got one last question here, Swizz.
What is your final message to young, talented players out there that haven't reached the pro level yet?
Work and believe. Those two things I feel are the foundation. But as well as that, try and enjoy the journey as well, because you might not go to the destination that you originally thought, but if you get the most out of the journey, it's still going to be all worthwhile, whatever you end up.
Love that.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us on our Coastal Football Agency Pros Around the World Episode 2 podcast. Nick Swirad, thank you so much. A massive congratulations on your behalf on making yourself available today.
No, thanks, mate. It's been a pleasure. Thanks a lot.
Absolute pleasure. Swizz, have a good one, mate. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, right.
Beautiful.
Thanks a lot, man.
And to our listeners, thank you very much also. So thank you very much to our listeners for tuning in and joining us. If you have any questions, please leave them down in the comment section below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And on behalf of us here at Coastal Football Agency, signing out. Good night.